Hi everybody, Amanda Betcher here. Week 6 oral presentation. Seems to be going very quickly. So today I am doing choosing your psychotherapist and determining the usefulness of psychotherapy. This was conducted by Mary Lee Smith and Jean Glass. This article covers all aspects of psychotherapy and its many therapy methods. This study is about which therapy method is best to help you change your life and to help you become a happier person. So when we're looking for a therapist, you might become overwhelmed, wonder if it will really work, which type is best for you. There are so many. There's behavior therapy, humanistic therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, psychodynamic therapy, just to name a few. So we're going to jump right to it, and the significance of this study is that prior to Smith and Glass's work, researchers were trying to prove which therapy method was the most successful. And spoiler alert, all of the therapies are the same, have the same effectiveness. So now clinicians can focus on which method type is best for their patients, rather than what is the best method overall. So in 1977, Smith and Glass gathered many studies regarding psychotherapy and the effectiveness, and they gathered them all and analyzed them. So they took 375 studies that looked at the effectiveness of counseling and psychotherapy, and they analyzed them using meta-analysis. This is a type of analysis that Glass developed. It's a technique that uses all of the data collected, brings them together as one single whole, and then they use all of that to analyze the data. So Smith and Glass wanted to know how counseling therapies affects the participants or the individual. Rate how much each method affected the individual, whether it be positive or negative. And then they wanted to compare the results from each type of therapy method. So they hypothesized that therapy is effective, and if one therapy was more effective than others, then this data is going to show that information. So of the 375 studies that were gathered, Smith and Glass were able to compare different types of therapies because each individual study also drew a comparison between two types of therapy methods. So each individual study was comparing one method against another, or even individuals who had no therapy at all, which would be the control group. So Smith and Glass ensured that they incorporated the rate of success of each type of therapy method because that was something that was important to them. So the initial studies they chose were ones that measured effectiveness thoroughly, measured in multiple ways, and then measuring the same way multiple times. These studies used a total of 25,000 participants, 22 being the average age, average hours of therapy, 17 hours per participant, and the therapist's years of experience were about 3.5. So the expected outcomes they used to assess the effectiveness, like how effective were these therapy sessions, they would look at increased self-esteem, reduction in anxiety, improvements in school, improvements in overall life. So Smith and Glass compared this large amount of data 3 different ways. So they took all this data, and they compared the treated participants and the non-treated participants, which was the controlled group, and found that 75% of these participants that were being treated were happier and more adjusted than the non-treated participants. Only 12% of the participants saw a negative effect from their therapy sessions. And if Smith and Glass were going to deem that therapy ineffective, that percentage would have to be closer to 50%. So the second way that they compared the therapy methods and effectiveness is that of specific therapy method. I'm not sure. Let me repeat that. The second they compared therapy and the effectiveness of that specific therapy method, much more clear, and found that all types of therapy is better than no therapy, no matter what the method is. So the participants that went to therapy were just better off than the control group that did not have therapy. And thirdly, they compared the different types of therapy with each other by placing all the different methods into two groups called superclasses. The behavior superclass, which included systematic desensitization, behavior modification, and implosion therapy. And then the non-behavior superclass, that was all the other therapy methods. From there, they compared the behavior class to the non-behavior class with the control group, which that was the participants that had no therapy at all. And they compared those, analyzed the data, and any differences that may have arisen previously were no longer evident amongst the superclasses. So from this data they collected and analyzed, they were able to come up with three conclusions. First and foremost, therapy works. Anyone that goes to therapy will be better for it. Secondly, it doesn't matter which therapy method you choose. Analyzed with others, they were all successful at the same rate. And third, many researchers found that therapy to be unsuccessful as a whole, but these findings are due to the vast amount of research that's been published, and it's difficult to find relevant information amongst it all. So Smith and Glass both feel that their research will gave way to more similar techniques in the future. So the positives of this study is that there were a couple pros I felt. First, they gathered their data from previous studies. So they were able to weed out the studies that could have had some bias in it. And the second pro is that they were able to have such a large number of studies. They ended up using information from 25,000 participants. That's a lot. So I felt like that was a pro. The only con that I can think of was that they didn't really conduct any research of their own for this particular study. And again, I think that's kind of a weak con, but that's really all I could come up with. And I think this study should have value to anyone who goes to therapy or is thinking about going to therapy. It's important to find a therapist that uses a variety of methods so that they're able to match you with what works best for you in your situation at that particular time. This study was able to open the doors to various findings, such as different therapies can help different type of health ailments, such as migraines. It also in a recent study, just in the book, I think it might have been last week or this week, phobia is being treated with systematic desensitization. I can't say that word. You know what I mean. And I'm not starting over. So perhaps the clinicians need to focus on which methods works for which patients rather than the particular methods that works for everyone or them. So no matter the case, just going to therapy seems to be the key factor for feeling better and lessening that anxiety and whatever's happening. So thanks for sticking with me. Have a great weekend.